When Crisis on Infinite Earths was first announced, I basically saw two outcomes from this event. The first being the decline, the harbinger of the end of the Arrowverse, as it would slowly, each show, cancel, shut down, and be forgotten. The other half being the fact that this would be a rebirth of the Arrowverse, reigniting everything that's great about it, and would just push new shows and ideas to the forefront of the multiverse of DC to this event. And what really works about this show, which is basically this: you can take into account writing and special effects, and it has flaws, of course, but there's one thing that the Crisis and the Arrowverse got right, and it's that it has heart. And at the end of the day, that's what we all return to. Heart of DC is fully on display in this cross. Let's talk about it.
The multiverse. Every existence multiplied by possibility and spread out in infinite measure. Now there is a malevolent force at work, one driven by a singular goal: the destruction of all there is.
We need your help to stop this antimatter wave.
All right, then Flash.
One thing is certain. Everything we know, everything there is, and everything there ever was, is doomed.
Comic Crisis fully embraces the duality that comes with an event like this. On one hand, you have these terrible events that could wipe out billions and destroy entire universes, and on the other hand, you have these mid to late 20-year-olds in leather spandex with superpowers trying to fight and be the first and only line of defense humanity has to offer. So it's this ridiculousness that comic books have always had, that these shows are fully able to embrace and balance with life-threatening stakes, that really brings joy to one's heart, and that I believe really helps bring out the fantastical, ridiculous duality of these type of events. And when you embrace the duality of this crossover, you really realize that it, at the end of the day, focuses on the heart of these individuals. We lived with these characters. We've seen them cry, we've seen them eat, sleep, lie, die. We've seen these characters do everything, and we've learned to care about them and grow with them and laugh with them. And Oliver Queen's sacrifice in this crisis is a reminder that I can see these heroes as real people. I can see them as people that are complex and rich and caring individuals that at the end of the day will try everything to save everyone. And that being reminded of that hopefulness, of that heart, and that it exists within all people, whether you're the everyman like Ryan Choi or the Kryptonian like Kara Danvers, heart exists within everyone. And you can keep trying and pushing as hard as you can, and you'll fall down and get hurt, but you have to pick yourself back up again. And that's what this crossover really reminded me of, to have heart. Not to say that there isn't faults with this crossover. I mean, there is a bit of uneven pacing, and sometimes the writing is off, and because you only have so much time to go through this entire story and only so much budget, sometimes CGI will look terrible, sometimes things will be left unexplained that will hopefully be explained in their own individual shows, and sometimes you just see things like, hey, why don't you just call everyone? But at the same time, you can't pay every actor, or you can't do this. So there are obvious flaws with this crossover. The scope being inhibited by the fact they are in a television medium and can't do everything. And because they do lack a lot, they do have a lot of fan servicey moments, which I enjoyed. I mean, I think I haven't heard one person complain about seeing Ezra Miller show up. I mean, just speaking of a lack of scope, that Bruce Wayne Kate Kane interaction was interesting, but how much better would it have been if they had an actual fight, if they were given the time to breathe, and they had an actual deep discussion of their methodologies, ideologies, if they had actual time to breathe and discuss their ideologies and have an actual fight. Like, I would have loved to see a Kit Kane and Bruce Wayne fight, but he just got electrocuted and that was it. You only pay for so much, and you only do so much within the limited scope of the medium. So although I understand some of the choices made, it just sucks because if you're a comic fan or even a DC TV fan, you know what's available, and when you're not able to get it, it's kind of regretful, but I mean, I get it. If there's one thing I really enjoyed in the crossover, it was a representation of heroism and different aspects that really make up what it means to be human. Expressly portrayed by the Paragons, love, hope, all that. It was so fun. And although I thought the second and third episodes were a bit slower, unfortunately, if there's any issues I have with the last two, it's the fight choreography. The fight against Bebo was great because it was just ridiculousness and it was fun. But the final fight against the Anti-Monitor both fights against the Anti-Monitor was a bit anticlimactic because the fight choreography, clearly you just have Kara shooting her lasers. I think we saw several scenes of Batwoman just throwing batarangs over and over again. She'd throw punch, batarang, and it's the same animation, they just loop over and over again because you can't pay for new animations. But I just get it. I felt like if there was one thing that I really thought was mundane about the entirety of the crossover, it was the fights. I felt like it could have been better done. And if there's a fight I really enjoyed, it was the Superman one, the Brandon Routh, and I forgot his name. There's just one fight scene I really want to speak on, which is basically the ending fight scene against the Anti-Monitor. It was interesting because episode 4 was the climax of that event, and number 5 is the status quo and dealing with the reality that we now live in. So when he came back, it was very anticlimactic, and it didn't live up to the previous episode. But then, thinking about it and examining it from a different angle, I kind of realized that the final fight against the Monitor isn't about the Monitor. It's about the characters. Because the fight against the Monitor, the last real fight against him was the one where Oliver died. This last one is really more about the League. This one is about the Justice League, and I would argue that this is their first official fight together. While this is kind of like their introduction to being officially formed, I would say that this is not about the Monitor, so I wouldn't really count it as a Monitor fight. I would count it as the League's first solidified outing together in public in this brand new world that they carved for themselves. Because guess what? They mentioned there's 52 Earths. The new 52 is over, baby. It's time for rebirth, and this is where we're at. So it's less about the Monitor and more about the characters. So once I examined the fight from that perspective, it wasn't as bad as I had previously thought. Even if the action was a little lackluster, I still enjoyed seeing everyone together, and I strongly wish they had a Justice League show. Well, the crossover is plagued by the normal issues that DC TV usually has. I thought its reiteration of the message of having heart in tough situations was fantastic. I know this was honestly really a tangent. This whole video had no real structure to it. But if you want to hear my real thoughts, there's an article I wrote down in the description below that you can check it out and argue with me on the internet about. So if you like this video, don't like and don't subscribe, but please comment. I'll check you later.